development programs and why they don't always work like we hope they do. Before we get started, I would like us to get to know each other. And so I am going to stop sharing really quick. And I know we are an intimate group today, so we're going to be talking a lot. What I'd like to do, just to get to know you guys a little bit more, is I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself, your name, your focus area. I know people typically say, what do you do? But in case you're retired or you are living a work optional life, I just want to know, what is your focus right now? And lastly, I want to know, what are you hoping to get out of today's discussion? And I'm selfishly asking that so that I can make sure that I give you what you came here for. And so with that being said, I am going to start. So my name is Kalenga. I am currently working in talent development in the nonprofit sector, particularly affordable housing. I support a wonderful company based in Hayward. So if you're ever there, say hi. Why I decided to make this course in the first place, you will see from my presentation. I have been through 4 years of leadership development programs within my organization, and we've had varying levels of success and lots of lessons learned. So we're going to talk about that today. And now I'd like to hand it over to Mickey. Tell us your name, what your focus is, and what are you hoping to get out of today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the pass off there, Kalenga. My name is Mickey Fitch Collins, she, her pronouns. I work for Learnit, learnit.com. We're a learning and development organization based out of San Francisco. We are located all over the country. I'm in northern Wisconsin, so it's a little bit late and dark, as you can probably tell from where I'm at. My role at our organization, I'm relatively new to Learnit. I'm just celebrated my 3rd month anniversary, but I'm a leadership and professional development instructor for the organization. And I also help with some content development and some of the courses that we do. We do leadership and professional development courses for all sorts of different industries and folks. And what I'm hoping to get out of the program tonight, we're in the process of kind of doing a content refresh for a lot of our classes. We try to kind of refresh everything every couple of years with new information and new research and such. And like every other organization, we're in the trying to kind of level ourselves up and scale the business, and just trying to kind of better understand like what are some potential edges and tips that we can bring to our programs to help enhance the experience for our participants. So yeah, thanks so much. Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you, Mickey. Coincidentally, one of the years of leadership program experiences I had was with your counterparts in California. So a small world. All right, I'm going to pass it to Laura. Please introduce yourself and what are you hoping to get out of today's training? And you are on mute. I'm sorry. I can't lip read that well. I'm learning though.
There you go. Better. How's that? Can you hear me now? Yeah. Should know by now, right? How many of these we've been on in the last 2.5 years, but here we are. Yes. Hello, Laura Hastings, up here in Santa Rosa, work for a large community bank here. We have a group of 5 of us in learning and development who deliver all kinds of learning and development opportunities around the bank. My manager and I are heading up the leadership development, a portion of that. We've had this program in place for several years. We get excellent feedback. We always have a great interaction when we hold these classes. But although it's supported and expected for all the leaders to attend these sessions from the highest level in the bank, we still struggle with getting attendance, and we struggle with people signing up, and what's I'll maybe overshare a little bit, but some of our senior leaders, actually, experienced leaders that we're currently struggling to fill our extraordinary coach class, and how do we get that participation, even though we have really good support, we get great feedback. And so, it's just kind of an ongoing thing. The bank's gone through a lot of changes lately, as we all have, I know. But, it's just one of those things where, is there something we can tweak? Is there something that we can do a little differently to get that buy-in? Do we need a refresh? Do we need, what is it that we can do?
Okay. Thank you, Laura, for sharing. I'm going to hand it off to Pamela.
Hello, Pamela Bianchi with Santa Clara County Parks and Recreation. I am sort of a one-stop shop for training, so anything involved with setting up, facilitating, creating, delivering, all of the good stuff in between. And I'm here today because we've implemented a leadership training series or program within the last 2 years. And what I'm struggling with the most is that during the training, so partly getting people in the seats. I also have an issue with, some of the people that need it most don't show up. But then the folks that are there, we have, great participation, engagement. Everybody's all excited and motivated, and then they go back to their various work locations and it's sort of business as usual. And there's no like continued learning or implementation of the skills that they learn. So bridging the gap between what they're learning and how it applies or how it shows up in their real world.
All right. Thank you so much, Pamela. Karen, please introduce yourself and what are you hoping to get out of today's session?
Hi, I'm in the car, so I'm not sure if you can hear me.
I can. Drive safely.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm kind of at a new company. I'm a seasoned L&D person, but at a new company and it's growing tremendously. And we're just starting to launch our leadership development program. And I don't have any specific questions. I'm really here to listen in. It's a smaller company that is really set in its ways, And now that we're putting some formal training around, just try to understand what some other challenges others have had.
Perfect. All right. So right at the beginning of designing and putting together a leadership program. Great. Now I will ask you, Paul and Jessica, what you hope to get out of today's session. And if you could introduce yourself to the group, although I know you and value your company. I will start with Jessie.
Okay. I just moved over and was doing attendance, but okay. So those of you who are members at least probably know me as admin. Whenever you get email from admin, that's me. So my name is Jessica Levant, also known as Jessie, and I'm sort of a retired one of you. And it's interesting hearing, I guess, all of the previous comments that we were dealing with that back in the 80s and 90s too. I mean, it's the same issues. So that's interesting. I'm looking forward to what Kalinga has to present. But I'm here because I like to keep on top of things. I work for ATD now, and so I go to most of the programs just so I know what's cool and what's hot and what's still there after all these decades. So that's me.
Thank you, Jessica.
And I
Paul?
should just throw in, if you ever have a question about the chapter, you start with admin, I will get you to the right person to answer it.
Thank you, Jessie. Paul?
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, good. So I'm Paul and Jessie. I'm semi-retired doing some work with the city of Santa Rosa on a lot of training, some of it in the leadership development area. And also I'm a seasoned facilitator and designer of leadership programs in a variety of settings. And I'm here basically to kind of figure out, why do we think they're failing? I think sometimes the metrics aren't telling us what we need to know to kind of know where to do some of the tweaks to make them more effective. So that's kind of mine. I'm calling in from Savannah, Georgia. I'm on my phone, so I have some limited capabilities of doing things. And since I'm on a trip and we're starting at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'm going to stay for about 45 minutes.
I think that's fair. Thank you, Paul and Mickey, both of you calling from, I think Eastern time zones. Is that it? Central, not Pacific. So, all right. So with that being said, let's kick into the training itself. There we go. All right, so really the learning objective that I have for our discussion today is to reflect on key factors that can cause leadership development programs to be ineffective, or I should say less effective, and practice designing a leadership program that avoids or mitigates certain pitfalls. And so how are we going to achieve this objective? Let's talk about our agenda. First, we're going to connect with each other and talk about getting back to why it matters. Why do we do leadership development programs in the first place? Why don't we just let managers build their leadership skills organically on their own without creating these programs or forums? Then we're going to talk about our intent when we build a leadership development program versus the reality. And here I'm going to share my own personal case study to illustrate. Lastly, after doing some reflection and thinking about some common best practices, which I will explain, I'm going to have you do an exercise to reimagine what that leadership learning experience could look like in a world where we mitigated a lot of common pitfalls that can occur. And then we're going to close and network. And so this is going to be an interactive discussion if you have not already figured that out. And so I do ask that as much as it is safe, that we keep our cameras on. As much as it is safe and as much as you are able. Of course, hearing your voice works just fine. And I'm speaking specifically to whoever was in the car. I forget who that was, but please be safe. Safety first. So that being said, let's jump into our first activity. So what I'd like to do is I would like to pair you up, and I just want you guys to have a one-on-one conversation with your partner about why do we even do this in the first place? You know, what inspires our leadership teams, our talent development teams, ourselves to say we need to create a leadership development program. And I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes. Let's call it, you know, four minutes or so to chat. And forgive me, I'm going to ask who was in their car. Is it Karen? I believe is in the car. I think it's Karen. And so Karen, I'm going to have you stay here with me. Okay, so Karen, you just stay here with me. The rest of you go ahead and go to your respective rooms. You have about 4 minutes to chat. I know there is the temptation to kind of rehash introductions and why are we here and all of that, but I'm going to ask you to forego that temptation and just talk with your partner about what you would like to get out of it. So give me 1 second. Any questions about this activity?
No.
No? Okay. We're going to have one room of 3 people. So I'll give you 5 minutes. All right, have fun. I'll see you in a bit and we're going to share out. And Karen, like I said, since you're in the car, you just stay right here with me. Don't touch a thing. And Karen, if at any point you're like, no, I do want to join those breakout rooms, you're more than welcome. I just wanted to be mindful that you're in the car, then probably we're intending to listen more today. So that was my assumption, but please keep me honest if I'm wrong. Hey, Janet.
Hi,
Hi.
I just saw an email with another new link, not to be confused with yesterday's new link.
That was my fault. I could not find the original link, and because this was an event that had been pushed out due to my personal circumstances, I said, I'm just going to create a new link. But then I was afraid people wouldn't get it because I sent it from my personal account, and who knew? Anyway, I'm happy to see you. How was your day?
I'm happy to see you too. My day was quite fragmented.
So was mine.
I bet. And it still is, and it will continue to be, but that's okay. I'm glad to see you. But I guess that's why nobody's here, maybe.
They're in breakout rooms.
Oh,
So the question that we are discussing, they have about 2.5 minutes left, is why do we even bother creating leadership development programs? And so I'll give you this, since you've had a fragmented day, I want to give you this 2.5 minutes to sit in solace and think about your response to that question.
okay.
Why do we even bother?
Tell me the question one more time.
Why even create a leadership development program?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have about 2 more minutes. Welcome back. Wanted to sing that song. Welcome back. All right, keep me honest, Paul. Did you have enough time to chat? Okay, we were good. All right, so what came up for you guys? Why do we even bother creating leadership programs in the first place? Why does it matter? Now, I want to hear from a couple of you. So I guess I'll ask Mickey and then Pamela. Why do this in the first place?
Yeah, what our group, so there's Laura and Paul and I, what we talked about was that leadership isn't a skill that comes naturally to some people. And so, you have to be teaching some of those skills and helping people kind of understand some of the things that you need to possess or be able to do. And that sometimes people naturally fall into management or supervision roles just based on that they've been there for a while, or that they're outspoken, or that, you always talk about, people who are really good at their jobs get promoted into entirely new jobs. And, that sort of thing. And it's not necessarily that they have the skills or aptitude for that next level. You have to train them up into that. We also talked about, the importance of Paul brought up like helping people who want to develop leadership skills, as opposed to those who are being, I always think of the word voluntold to be there, forced to go to these trainings and things like that, versus people who are like, I really want to level up my skills. We also talked a little bit about kind of great resignation, great reshuffle, quiet quitting, all of these types of things. There's a lot of people that are shifting jobs right now because of things like meaning or lack of meaning and purpose, or poor managers, poor supervisors. And we have to have good people to be able to put into those positions that other people are creating vacancies in.
Yes, thank you. Anybody else wanted to add to what Mickey said if you were in her group? No? Got it. Good. Thank you. All right. Pamela, what about you? What did you guys talk about in your room?
So I think more of the same of what was just shared, but also the fact that we want to level set what leadership looks like in our department, so that leadership is, if not the same, because that doesn't make sense, but at least the values for leaders are similar or the same across the board. And upholding our brand.
Yes, thank you. And if you see me looking down, I'm writing notes. All good things. Other things to consider, especially for those of you, if you're in a situation where you're struggling to get support or resources in the first place to keep the leadership program going. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, and belonging. It's kind of tied to what Mickey said, but there are studies and articles out there talking about how providing leadership development and as a resource provides equitable access to employees across the organization to be able to grow, so that it doesn't just feel like, oh, it's the boss's favorites that get the promotion or that get the opportunity. And then it also helps to set a standard of expectations for people who manage other people within your organization. And so leadership development helps to set a baseline. Of course, we want people to show up as themselves and to be their great diverse self, but we want to provide basic guidelines for this is what we expect. And so thank you all. Thank you for participating. Janet, I know that I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I did ask if you would take a minute or two to think about this question. What are your thoughts?
In 2 minutes, I didn't have a lot of time to reflect, but just why do we need this training? Because these skills don't come naturally to people.
Yeah. All right, so we get the why. Let's talk about intent behind the leadership training, which is tied to a lot of the things you said, versus reality of how these things can pan out. And I'm going to use my own personal story. So back in 2018, pre-COVID, pre-everything, my organization decided for the second year in a row that we wanted to do a leadership development program. And we had 50 business leaders across the organization within it. Oh, sorry, this was 2014. And so one of the intents of the leadership series was for participants to have a full understanding of how they can become better leaders. This seems like a pretty standard thing to do. But the reality was that there were minimal to no assessments of the participants' actual performance. We just kind of threw them into some trainings saying, hey, here are the basic skills you should learn. But there wasn't really an assessment of here's where you are, and therefore not really a realistic conversation of here's where you need to be. The other good intent that we had going into this was we wanted participants to be able to apply the lessons that they had in the program into their day-to-day work. But all of the trainings were conducted off-site, which was fine. They were in beautiful locations. We had a great lunch, they loved it. But the facilitator focused a lot on academic theories and studies and research. There wasn't a whole lot of application and little to no practice in between trainings, no exercises. So you learn and then you go back and who said it? Business as usual. Yeah, that was us. The third intent that we had was we wanted participants to use the lessons from the leadership training to build their skills over time, but we had no follow-up evaluation. So we had no pre-assessment of where they were. We have no post-assessment of where they are. And there's no plan about how to continue to foster that learning moving forward. And so that was our reality. How it ended is we had great surface level feedback. People said, I love the facilitator. I love the training. I love that I was here. But then fast forward a couple of years and our leaders were like, we just spent a lot of money. What did that change? And we didn't have a clear answer for them, which from a talent development perspective, given how difficult it is for leaders to invest in talent development, not being able to show what we did for an impact was not great. And so here are some of the common best practices that we learned and that we've read along the way. The first is building in accountability upfront. And for each of these best practices, I have a source at the bottom, and I can share these slides after the training. I have a resource that I got actually from the ATD International Conference that happened a few months ago. What does that mean? So building an accountability. A couple of you said, how do I get butts in seats, or how do I get people to realize that this is important? And the reality is that we saw the most success when we got pre-alignment from our executive team that certain staff members needed to be in the room. Now, that took a lot of pre-work and pre-alignment. We had to collaborate with our executive team in order to align on the topics that they would be focusing on and on the structure of the program. But by having, at a minimum, a pool of people who have to be there, you can still open it up to the rest of the org and say, hey, if you want, you can do this. But having pre-alignment on, no, you should be in here. And you can come up with a variety of reasons. One of them, for example, was that baseline, like I said, that you want to set for all managers. So we essentially said, if you manage people in this organization, you will need to go through this leadership program at least once. And the executive team signed off on it. Secondly, if you do have, I think one of you said senior level leaders who aren't as engaged, or maybe I heard that wrong, we faced a similar issue. And so we would say, okay, well, put the data where your mouth is. If you feel like you don't need to be in this training, you show me a performance review that says that you've already aced this skill, whether it's communication, whether it's emotional intelligence, whatever the topics were that we were covering, we were like, fine, show me why you don't need to be in here. So building accountability up front, there's a great book also called, or a great article, also Why Leadership Developments Don't Work and What Does, that talks in more detail. Second is designing learning in the flow of work. So I mentioned that one of the lessons we realized was that planning isolated trainings offsite where we were focused on academic theories related to leadership wasn't necessarily the best way to help our participants connect the dots between what they were learning and how they were actually going to take that back to the workplace. So there's another great book that I will refer to you all called Learning While You Work by Paul Smith. He's actually written a couple of articles for ATD National. He spoke at ATD National. And he talked about teaching people within the context of their actual job. Now, obviously, this is easier and more appropriate if you have a smaller group of people that you're dealing with. But when you're expanding it to the masses, brainstorming ways that you can help people apply or practice, maybe with prompting questions, maybe with thought exercises, maybe with actual exercises. But the point is to design the learning experience within their ecosystem. Now, as I'm saying that, I want to pause. Any questions or comments on that? And I see one note in the chat, satisfaction assessment versus impact assessment. Yes. But any comments so far on these best practices? Pretty straightforward. Okay. So lastly, focusing on the follow-up. One of the things that I've actually heard from many learning and development professionals was that the data analytics side of leadership development was the hardest for a couple of reasons. One, we're teaching what organizations traditionally think of as the soft skills. How do you measure someone's ability to do a soft skill, to communicate effectively, to build trust? How do you measure someone's emotional intelligence? I mean, you can give them one of the online assessments, but how do you really measure it? But we recognize that some form of follow-up, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, was necessary in order to show our leaders why the leadership development program needed continuous investment. And so the key takeaway here is that the evaluation and follow-up plan should be scoped out before a single training is even planned, ideally. At a minimum, it should be done in parallel with while the learning experience is being designed. But what we have to steer away from is jumping right into the design, the development. Here's the topic. I have the facilitator. Did you buy the catering? And then the assessment is, oh crap, let's throw together a survey later. Design the evaluation upfront. And I have a third resource there, also why leadership programs don't work. Any questions about this so far? Again, pretty straightforward, not rocket science. Here's what I'd like you to do. Take a handy dandy notebook or something where you can write notes, a Post-it, a Word document, the Notes app on your phone, or again, if you're still in the car, just listen and think about it. Which of these items do you feel like you face the biggest challenge with? Or you feel like historically, if you're not doing it currently, you feel like historically has been the toughest part of the process? Just take a look. Is it building the accountability up front, getting the buy-in from leaders to hold people accountable? Is it designing the learning experience within the flow of their work? Or is it the follow-up and evaluation? Just think to yourselves. No need to shout it out. I'm going to give you a minute. And when you have your answer, go ahead and put a Y for me in the chat if you are able. Okay. All right. Looking pretty good. If you're still thinking about it, continue on. What I'd like you to do is I'm going to break you back out into pairs. And I want you to talk with your partner about what about that thing that you chose. Of course, there could be a number of roadblocks, but why did you focus in on that one particular thing? And what is, well, two things. Why did you focus in on that particular thing? But then I also want you to talk about what are some solutions or alternative ideas that you could come up with in order to mitigate that challenge? Okay, so 2 questions, I'll put them in the chat. The first is, what is the one best practice that you find hard to execute? And the second, what are some alternative ideas to mitigate that challenge? And I want you to think about it within the context of what you have available to you, right? Because obviously, if your challenge is, well, we don't have enough money to pay for the great training facilitator, just give me $200,000. That's great. But if you work for a small organization and that's not realistic, maybe that's not the solution you throw out. Think about within what you have available, what are some alternative ideas? And I have a typo, sorry. Questions about this? I'm going to give you more time, don't worry, because I want you guys to flesh this out together. Any questions? No, pretty straightforward. All right. This time I'm going to give you 10 minutes. And just give me 1 second. I'm going to give you 10 minutes. Whoops. Sorry. And I believe Karen, are you still in the car? She's still in the car. Okay, I want to keep her safe. All right, and there will be one group of 3 people. So Karen, you go ahead and stay here with me. The rest of you, I'll see you in 10 minutes and we will chat more. Laura, do you need some help or you just, oh, good. And Karen, I know you are driving, but if it is safe for you and you would like to chat, I would love to have this same discussion with you and I'd be happy to just listen. But it's okay if you prefer not to, or you are not able. All right. Welcome back. Welcome back. Laura, keep me honest. Did you have enough time to chat? Oh, you're still on mute. I'm sorry.
Gosh, it puts me on mute when I come back in here. Honestly, I know where that button is. Yes, thank you. Yes, we had plenty of time. Yes.
Good, good, good. Janet, how about you? Oh, and you're on mute as well.
The question is, was that enough time? Yeah, I would say so. I was in mid-thought when we came back into the main room, but that's okay. I was prepared to be in mid-thought.
I prefer mid-thought to mid-sentence, you know.
I was in mid-sentence as well, but that's okay.
All right, all right. Well, hopefully the smiles on your faces are an indicator that there was some good chit chat that happened. I want to hear from a couple of you just on what was shared. And so I guess first I would like to ask if there is a volunteer that would like to share their particular challenge and what ideas you came up with or talked about.
Maybe I'll start since I was in mid-sentence and was sort of in brainstorming mode. For those of you who don't know me, my connection to leadership training is I'm a workshop leader in writing skills. So I help leaders and emerging leaders improve their writing so that they can build relationships rather than hurt relationships through their emails and documents. So the learning edge for me, or the edge for me, is learning in the flow of work. And as I thought about it, it occurred to me that a way to build that into programs might be as simple as templates that a leader or an emerging leader can use in XYZ situation. To add that as a supplement after the workshop. And so I guess, yeah, that would be the simple thought. And there are more complex ways to make that available, but.
Yeah. Well, I like that, Janet, because the emphasis is simple but effective, right? And a lot of our organizations, we deal with so many systems and softwares and processes and bureaucracies and approvals and meetings and meetings and meetings. And coming up with simple solutions sometimes is all you need to really penetrate that pushback, right? You're like, don't worry, it's simple. I'm not asking you to do 20 steps here. Take this template, follow it.
Right. When X, reach for Y. And yeah.
Yeah, and I like Mickey wrote in the chat, tools in the tool belt for people to use. Thinking of the leadership experience, not just as a one-off, but as a tool that they can access, like a maintenance person trying to fix plumbing. Great, great. Anyone else? Anyone want to share? Paul, thank you so much for coming. Sleep well and safe travels tomorrow.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anyone else? Or, you know, you don't have to share your own personal experience, but what was talked about in your group, for example? Laura?
See, I unmuted. Aren't you proud of me?
I am.
So we talked about, you know, that first item on your you know, continuum is getting that senior leadership support. And you know, that's the thing that I struggle with the most. Not that we don't have that support from senior leadership, we absolutely do. It's sort of the disconnect between them saying, we want all these classes full, we want all of our leaders to go through this, we want, you know, all of the follow-up that you've planned and the level 3 measurement and all of that good stuff. But when it comes to actually filling classes, we don't get that directiveness to say, okay, you're going to sign up and you're going to sign up and you're going to sign up. So, you know, what can we do to bridge that gap? And, you know, it's just one of those things. It might be kind of like coaching up and, you know, being more proactive in terms of suggesting how they can help us to fill these sessions. So, you know, it's just started to get the wheels turning, and Jesse had some good suggestions for me on that one. So.
Oh yeah? I want to hear some good suggestions. What'd you share? Or what did you hear, Laura?
Well, it's just, it's not necessarily, pointing out to people who need to sign up that you need to attend this class or whatever. It's that you need these skills. Like, what is it going to do for you if you're a
Right.
part of this development?
More
And
of the pull as
right,
opposed to
so
pushing.
how are you, are your people vocalizing? Are your people voting with their feet?
Mm.
You need this. So how do we do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some other thoughts. So I want to share with you two tools that my team regularly uses whenever we're proposing any training. But I'm going to hold off because I want to hear from another room to see what came up for you. And oh, Pamela, did I have you in a room by yourself?
No, I was in with Paul.
Oh, okay, because he left. Well, what did you guys talk about? What came up for you?
So I had the opportunity to glean from Paul his years of experience in public employment, because a lot of the issues that we have in government, I think, are unique to government.
Yeah.
Things like, succession planning, you can't single out a single person. It has to be, open to everyone. And if you have, like in this context, a gap in skills, you can't as easily say you are lacking this skill, especially if it is a requirement of the job specification that they're currently in. That becomes, a union issue. Similarly with like the assessments pre and post, we struggle with that as well. Again, with the union aspect and protections for our public employees. So I was able to get a lot of really good feedback on ways to address that are focus on the learning and the training. So rather than having a comprehensive assessment before the training and a post assessment after, doing assessments during that are self-assessments that aren't turned in, they're not graded, they're not, it just gives the freedom to the person to decide whether or not they share where their gaps are. And then also identifying the difference between what's policy and what is actually happening in our work world. So Paul was sharing, there's a lot of discontent when people see and perceive things that aren't necessarily actually happening, and how to navigate that. So it was very, very helpful to hear from his experience.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Another thought to go along with that for those, and this kind of ties to what Laura was saying about pulling versus pushing people to do it. So if you're in a situation where you're like, well, I can't force people to do it, either because the senior leaders wouldn't be on board, that's not the culture of your organization, this just isn't how it's not that simple. Considering surveying the potential participants or the target group and asking, hey, what leadership experience, what are you looking for? What are you hoping to build? What skills do you want? And then taking that data and saying, well, based on the feedback, here is what they want, or here is what they're looking for. And then maybe based on their, other feedback, whether it's a performance review or their manager's assessment, here's what they're looking for. Maybe if we design around where they already want to focus, we'll get more engagement and we'll get more buy-in. Good thoughts, good thoughts. Anybody else, any other questions or comments? Hi, Jessica. Sorry, I have this big glare in my glasses. I didn't see
It's okay.
you.
It's just what you said to me. It's half of, I don't know if it's half, but it's one part of a two-part thing. It's also getting the organization as a whole to be your support and get you acknowledged as essential. So what Laura and I were talking about was someone like her boss or boss's boss or somebody having to sit down on that top level and say, look, if you want the organization to happen this way, you need people that can do these things. We can't sell it without you enforcing it. That is something like that.
Yeah.
So it's the analysis of what you're trying to do, not just for the person, but for the organizational direction, values, all of that, putting them together. And then it sounded like you said you did have that kind of enforcement. If you don't want to take this, you have to prove to me why you don't need it. I think you said way earlier. So you're ahead on this game from a lot of organizations, but.
Well, we just got there. Let me be transparent.
Yeah.
We just got there.
To me, that's really essential, because you can design a million training courses and they can be wonderful and somebody might even enjoy them, but that doesn't make them helping your organization become more successful, however that's defined.
Yes, and we designed a lot of great trainings, a lot of hours, little to no real impact. And it's a hard realization to learn, right? But you know, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time to plant a tree is today. So today we are planting trees. All right, Jesse, that is a great comment. And that actually segues into the last part of the presentation. Before we get into reflections and networking, I wanted to share with you 2 tools that helped our team to start this discussion up the ladder, to say, okay, we've assessed our gaps, we've recognized areas that we are facing a real challenge. Now let's put pen to paper and start the conversation so we can do this. And the first is what's called a formative evaluation. Have any of you guys heard of that term for formative evaluation? Okay, I see some nods. And so the formative evaluation, if you are unawares, is essentially, it's our guidebook. Before we start planning any trainings, we have to assess why it matters for our organization. Why are we been asked to do this? What do we intend to do? How do we intend to measure the impact? And what is our next step? And so let me go ahead and share my example. Can you all see 2023 leadership series? I hope so. Okay. And so this document this one's about 12 pages long. They vary in length. Let me blow it up just a little bit. But it essentially, this is more for our team. So for the people who are in charge of designing or ideating what a leadership development program would look like. I mean, it asks everything from who would your target audience be, what specific job tasks or things are they supposed to be able to do after this? What impact is this problem or gap having on the department, our company, customer base? And Jesse, I think this ties to your point.
Absolutely.
We used employee engagement data. I mean, we'll use P&L data. We'll say, you know, our HR team was doing a cost of attrition exercise. And I was like, let me use that. How much are we paying every time we lose an employee?
Yep.
And I asked them for their exit interview data. I was like, I want to see how many employees are leaving the company because of a bad manager. And I want to times that by how much it costs for us to lose an employee. And I want to tell the exec team, we're losing $1 million every year that we don't properly invest in leadership development. And so I will provide this. Don't worry, Jesse, I will make sure to partner with you first on the follow-up email, but I would like to provide this as a resource to all of the participants. It's just a thought exercise. One person on your team sits, whether it's you yourself, your boss, your direct report, you iron this out, and then you use this. So this 12-page document is kind of the full thought process. And then this second document is the executive summary, which I'm sure many of you have seen. But the executive summary is, I mean, I'm not going to assume that you don't know what it is. But for us, for me, it is the one pager. Because if your leaders are like mine, they don't have time to read 12 pages of my thought process. They just want to see, what do you want to do? When do you want to do it? And what impact is it going to have? But in this one pager, as you can see, I put my proposal right up front. And I say, in summary, if we're going to make this leadership development program effective, here's what we need. We're done with just doing one-off trainings and that's it. I'm going to need each manager to put at least one leadership development goal within their performance management system. Now,
That's good.
in case you're like, what? Never, I would never be able to loop this into performance reviews. The intent is not to loop it into the annual performance review. It is to document what is each participant doing to actually build their skills while they're going through this program. And it doesn't need to be elaborate. It could be one thing. I want to work on giving feedback more effectively with my staff. So by the end of this 6-month period, I want to improve that skill. That's all here. And then we incorporated other ideas here. We're like, look, we should probably have a mentorship program for participants who want it. Because sometimes you just need to talk to somebody about a specific issue and you just want to hear some advice. What about coaching to specifically help them get through specific challenges? And then what about supplemental videos? I put in masterclass. Have any of you guys looked at masterclass or thought about it? We aren't going to pay for masterclass. So I said, fine, let's create our own in-house masterclass style videos and let's leverage our executive team, because most of our executive team has been in their field or in field of in a leadership role for like 20, 25 years. Who better to talk about lessons learned, right? Anyway, I just wanted to show this to you all, and I want to send this to you after this training so that you too can sit down and, just like you did today, sit with yourself, sit with your team, sit with your client, sit with whoever and say, okay, you know what? All right. Okay, let me think this through, and then let's get some traction out of it. Any thoughts or comments there? Nadira, I haven't heard from you yet. Thank you so much for joining. I didn't know if you had any thoughts or comments.
Sure, and I apologize for being late. I didn't realize there was an updated link. So yeah, I think that what I shared in my group was that one of the things I struggle with was accountability. And I think that providing an example of that, like money loss or the revenue impact when participants don't go through the training versus participants that do would be very powerful, because at least in my organization, it's very much bottom line results driven. And so I think that's what really speaks to our senior leadership. I was also thinking additionally, because we have a lot of different opportunities for people to engage in learning and development, but I think one of the things is really identifying like what opportunities are actually available to participants at the time. And that's not something that senior leadership, like it's all kind of about kind of like a quiet rather than large and loud splash. So anytime we create a new leadership development or learning and development offering, we kind of soft launch it first, and people are just kind of like, where do I go for these things? So I think it's part, really just showing the benefits of the leadership development or learning and development training versus the costs of it. And then I think for our organization, really creating that proposal document that you showed on screen, I think just kind of socializing people on what programs you should send your people to or champion in your organization in what circumstances would be really powerful. And that's something that we don't really do.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, definitely want to get these templates to you. You know, with the examples that I've written, honestly, if you like the idea, steal it. Just copy and paste it and be like, or at least use that as inspiration to do some brainstorming or thinking of like, how could we do it? One of the things that also benefits me with these templates is I have an appendix for each that allows me to fully flesh out an idea, at least as much as I can for the proposal, right? Because the first question I get from executive leaders is, wait, so how is this going to work? Who's going to be responsible for doing it? And how much time and money is this going to cost me? And it's like, you want to have that answer up front as much as possible in order to increase the likelihood of buy-in. All right, so with that, we've had our discussion. It is 6:08, and I just want to hear from you all. My last question. Oops. Sharing screen. There we go. My last question. What is one key takeaway that you have from today's training? And if you're thinking, that lovely lady looks familiar, that is me trying to avoid copyright infringement because this training is recorded. So what is one key takeaway that you have from today's discussion? And I'll start this time with Pamela.
Hello. So I think it was really helpful to kind of hear other people's experience and the things that have worked for them. And actually, I'm really looking forward to the document that you shared, because I think you know, we're heading towards being more data driven, and people love saying that, but then what does that really mean? So having something like that available to really pull from and identify what's lost in our lack of leadership skills will be really helpful. And then also, like I said, working with Paul and coming from the same field or similar field was really helpful, because I felt like more so than being paired with someone who's from a private sector job, he understood what the constraints are. I really like the idea of sort of that pre and post assessment that you were describing as being helpful for your company, and perhaps trying to figure out how to implement that within the scope of public employment, and maybe trying out some of the things that Paul recommended for that purpose.
Yeah, thank you, Pamela. Laura, how about you?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You know, there were a lot of things, but I think something you said recently is churning in my head. My role as a learning business partner is one of my business partners is our marketing group, and they just got a new video camera that they're super excited about. So I think making some videos about successful leadership around the bank would be a lot of fun and would really speak to a lot of people. It would also give us kind of a refresh of our leadership development program and system. And we have a lot of new leaders at the bank, and I think it could be kind of exciting to get people to know them in that way and for them to share their best practices.
Yeah, for sure. And I wrote a little blurb on implementation and how that could look in order to get buy-in from the leaders. Because again, they're time constrained, and you know, some of them are a little self-conscious about being put on camera because they don't want to get in trouble. So helping them as much as possible to get over those hurdles will be great. Thank you. Nadira, how about you?
So I would say that ultimately what I've learned is just to really be creative and thinking through solutions. Like obviously, you know, we've identified the 3 hinge points that can either make or break a leadership development training. And I think as I was hearing from the group and as the night has gone on, I've really heard, you know, people really brainstorm what could work for their organization. So I think if anything, just really trying to identify like what haven't we thought of that could be put into place for our organization. And then going back to a point that you made earlier, I think it's really about knowing your audience. You know, if accountability is an issue, really trying to identify how you can meet them where they are rather than trying to drag them along. And I think that goes for both the assessment, that impact assessment, and even learning in the flow of work. You really need to understand like where your learners are, how they're coming to you, and ultimately what will make them invested in whatever training you're offering.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Nadira. Mickey, how about you?
Yeah, I think the thing that is still kind of bopping around in my head a little bit here is the best practices around learning in the flow of work, and then focusing on follow-up and evaluation, and just thinking about at Learn It, we provide training to all sorts of different industries and all sorts of different types of organizations. And I was sharing in a smaller group, it's very easy for us to get a lot of context information when we're doing a private class to one organization, because we can deeply understand all of the information that we have about that one business or that one organization, and be able to kind of key examples to that industry or that type of work, or the lingo they use, the acronyms they use, whatever that is. But when we have mixed audiences, you know, when you have one person from biotech, one person from government, one person from architecture, one person from medical supply, you know, to be able to give examples that are relevant to help people see themselves in the learning, rather than this is a separate experience I'm having where I'm stepping away from my job for a couple hours to go to this workshop. You know, I see myself in the learning, I see my job, I see my day-to-day in that learning. So I think that's what I'm thinking about. I appreciate you sharing some of like the reading resources and stuff too. I'm, you know, kind of pulling this stuff up on my other screen too, of a couple of books and articles and things that I want to read and kind of share with others in my organization as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Karen, I know you're still driving. If you're not, feel free to unmute and keep me honest. But I will ask Janet and then Jesse, really quick, what is one key takeaway?
I'm really intrigued. I'm continuing to brainstorm about learning within the flow of work, and the book that you mentioned, I think that, so the Paul Smith book, Learning While You Work, is that the title of it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that seems like a good place to start.
All right. And Jessica?
I've been only sort of half tuned in the last bit, but the main takeaway for me is what I say often: it's amazing what has not changed in 30 years. The issues, the problems, and even the solutions, the terminology has definitely changed. So I have to look something up and whatever, but the guts are the same. So nothing to add, but that's just always an interesting observation.
All right. Thank you. And that concludes the official presentation. I just have a couple of slides to share just to give some updates for the chapter. And then after that, if you feel free to stay and network. If you'd like to go on and take care of yourself, do something else, that's okay too. I just want to say thank you all for your time, for your communication, for your engagement. And with that, just a couple of kind of newsies, if you will. So as a chapter, we are always taking in new membership. If you are not a member and you just joined on a whim, but you liked today's event and maybe you want to get more, you can join today and use this code, join today. It's good for 7 days and you will get $20 off of your discount. If you're wondering, what do you get out of being a part of the chapter? Well, here are some examples. You get to come to events like this. In addition to learning discussions, we have networking opportunities. We are exploring the idea of getting together in person, but the reality is we just want to encourage connection between people such as yourself. If you are a member, you get access to our special interest groups, which allows you to brainstorm and to think with other L&D professionals in the local area. You can get help with certifications if you're trying to get your CPTD, APTD, these are talent development certifications. And you have an opportunity to get involved, to build up your resume with some experience if that is something that you are interested in. We have quite a few. Oh man, this is a busy slide. We have a lot of upcoming events, which you are welcome to join. If you are a member, we have our holistic learning and design workshop, special interest group. But we also have some professional development workshops. This is available for any of you. The first is on organizational assessment, making sure that your learning solution is solving the right organizational problem and that you're not really wasting your time and your stakeholders' time. The other workshop that we have is for DISC. So if you have been interested in the DISC model, you've been thinking about facilitating it for your organization, but you don't really have any formal training, here's an opportunity to get it. We have some TED discussions, which are free. Uh-oh.
What's
Is that
that?
happening to everybody? What did I do?
Yes,
Oh.
happening to me too.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry if any of you were impacted by that. That was, I don't know what that was.
Are we all
but
still here? Yeah,
I think we are, yes.
I think so.
So we have some free TED discussions, which if you like TED Talks, TED discussions are essentially you watch a TED Talk and you literally just talk as a group about the topic. Topics coming up are the authenticity myth, which I'm curious about that discussion coming up. And then because we're coming towards the end of the year, we have end of year celebration, both for the chapter as well as for this group. And then in November, we have unpacking quiet quitting, which is another term that has been scouring social media and mass media for a while now, at least the past year. So be on the lookout for those events. And
Can I just throw in, check the website list of programs, because that's all that would fit on the slide. There are more.
there are more. Yes, thank you. And
Members get a discount.
my presentation screen is going out of whack, so I'm not going to share that anymore. A couple of other public service announcements. We could always use help with volunteers. We are a volunteer-run organization. Jesse works for the chapter, but the rest of us are here for free. And so if you liked today's event, if you have ideas or things that you would like to do to build connections with L&D professionals, to do events, to reach out to people, please consider joining the chapter and becoming a volunteer. Thank you, Laura. And then lastly, we have a feedback survey that actually went out a half hour ago. We really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. It helps us to be better at bringing events to you. So go ahead and fill that out. And that's it. Thank you. I'll be here for another 10 minutes, just hanging out if you want to chit chat and talk. But if you have to go, take care of yourself, be safe, take care of your mental and emotional health, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And you'll receive Kalinga's handout later
Oh, yes.
tonight, because she's going to send it to me, but I'm going out and I'll be back and then I'll send it. So
You
check
will
your
receive
email.
it. You will receive it after the session.
Yeah,
Thank
but I
you.
will be gone.
Yes, thank you. All
Okay.
right.
Thank you, Kalinga. It was really a
Thank
good
you, Jesse.
session. I enjoyed it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I'm going to send you those things right now, but I did get your message. Have fun tonight. And thank you again for helping to send me.
Sorry about all the messages. I was typing in the chat and it kept disappearing. And it looks like you got it twice and then you got it again in a text. So, you know.
I got it. But thank you. I'm going to
Okay.
go ahead and